Hi, in today's episode, I'm going to take you through how you can prepare for a virtual interview. One of the reasons I decided to talk about this topic is because there is an increase in the number of virtual interviews that I see companies, or rather that I see candidates getting involved into. And of course, I thought I should talk about this topic because I really see most candidates, or rather I encounter job seekers who really struggle with virtual interviews. Have you ever heard stories of people saying that when they were just in the middle of an interview, their machine, or rather their equipment, went off and they were not able to complete an interview? Or just hearing someone saying that they were not able to connect and hence they didn't even take the interview. I realized that most people actually struggle with getting ready, setting themselves up, or even hacking virtual interviews. And that's why I want to talk to you, or rather I want to take you through some of the things that you need to consider if you've been getting invited for virtual interviews, or if you're even in your phase of job search. You never know when you're going to get an invite to take an interview virtually. So if you're here for the first time, my name is Nelly, and in this channel I share with you job search strategies, career development topics, and job search, just our personal and job search related topics to help you build a rewarding and fulfilling careers. So before I continue, just take a moment to subscribe to this channel, because when you do so, it actually tells me that you love this content and it gives me the motivation to continue doing more great content to help you with your job search journey. And if you're a returning viewer, welcome back, and thank you so much for supporting this channel. If you've also not subscribed as a returning viewer, please consider to hit that subscribe button. So before we start, I think it's quite important for me to tell you what a virtual interview is. So virtual interviews are interviews that are undertaken or administered online. They are taken through platforms such as Skype or Zoom or Microsoft Teams. Of course, there are so many other platforms, but these are the mostly common used platforms for virtual interviews. And maybe you're wondering, why would an employer prefer this type of an interview, or this mode of doing their interviews? Obviously, virtual interviews help an employer to save time, because, or even from the side of a job seeker, it's really easy just to get you to an interview really quick, because it eliminates the need for you to plan your travels, that may make a recruitment process sometimes longer. So basically, it helps an employer to really save on the recruitment time. And again, also, we are in a digital world, and especially post-COVID, we've seen most companies, or at least there's an increase of remote jobs. That basically tells you that there are companies that are nowadays fully operated remotely. So there are even employers who do not have a physical office. So they do most of their things, or rather they take most of their engagements with candidates, which include interviews, virtually. Now, with that understanding, I want to share with you some of the tips that you need to consider when you're invited for a virtual interview, so that you don't get yourself in a state where you're not able to undertake an interview, or the interview is cancelled or rescheduled, or for whatever reasons you're not able to engage the panelist well, because you either didn't prepare well, or you had issues with your platform and device, and so on. So if this is something that you want to learn, then I'm sure you want to stick to this video till the end. So the first thing that you need to consider is to familiarize yourself with the platform that the interviewer, or rather that is being used for the interview. So some of the platforms which I already mentioned include Zoom, Microsoft Teams, or platforms such as Skype. So sometimes, or most of the time, it is really difficult. You can face challenges if you've never used these platforms. Sometimes you may assume that it is as easy to navigate as any other platform. There's nothing that is obvious. So it is important that when you receive a link, or rather an interview invite, once you've been informed of the platform that will be used for that interview, then please take your time to familiarize yourself with that platform. By familiarizing yourself, I mean that you need to know how to put on your camera in that platform, how to how to unmute yourself, because I've also seen candidates even struggling to unmute themselves when the interview is already in progress. How to turn on your speakers, how to increase or decrease your volumes. So you need to ensure that you have familiarized yourself with the platform in terms of all the functionalities of the platform that you will require to use during your interview session. The second thing that you need to consider is to test the equipment that you will use. So some of the equipment that you can use for virtual interviews include a mobile phone or a computer. Of course, I highly prefer that you use a computer if you can, but it is still okay if you can't. You can just use your mobile phone. So you need to test that device before using it. I don't know if you've had stories of people getting to the interview time, or rather the day of the interview, then you realize that the computer that you have cannot actually support that application that is being used for the interview, or even your phone, trying to download that application the last day, trying to connect it to the network, you even realize that maybe your computer had technical challenges. So it is quite important that you test your device, the device that you'll use, whether it's your phone. You need to test its compatibility with that application. If it is compatible with Skype, it is compatible with Microsoft Teams, if it is compatible with Zoom, if it has enough space to carry that application, and so on. So it is quite important that you test your device before the day of the interview and ensure that it is actually accepting, or rather that platform or that application that will be used for the interview works really well on your device. The next thing you need to consider, that's the third thing, is to check on your connectivity. So one of the reasons why candidates struggle with virtual interviews is because of internet connectivity. It depends which location you're taking it from, but sometimes you realize that if you're taking a virtual interview in a place that there's connectivity, or rather there's unstable network, then you'll really struggle. Reason being, you're using an application, or rather a device that could really need, or that could really require a strong internet connectivity. So please don't wait to check your Wi-Fi network on the last day. If you're using maybe mobile data, you need to check with the area that you are, which one really works well. So then you need to ensure that you're using the network or the connectivity that works well in a place where you are. You don't want to get into an interview and begin to struggle to hear what the panel is saying, or even have the panel struggle to hear what you're saying. So it's really, really important that you ensure that your connectivity, you have a strong, if it's Wi-Fi, the Wi-Fi is really strong. If it is mobile data that you're using, the mobile data is really strong. And also, as I said, it's quite important to ensure that the application that you're using can actually withstand, or rather the strength of your network can actually sustain the platform or the application that you're using for the interview. The next thing you need to consider, and that's the fourth one, is the location where you'll be taking your interview from. So in terms of the location, you need to ensure that you're in a location that is free from noise, because noise is one of the things that will really put off anyone. I think even if you're having a conversation, an online conversation with someone, and then a very noisy background, from time to time you'll really get distracted. So you need to ensure that you're in a location that is free from noise. Then you also need to check on your background. You need to ensure that your background is not distracted, it's not crowded. You need to check on the images that are in your background. So you need to have a background that is clear from distraction. Distraction could be things like images. Distraction could be the type of decor or the decorations that you have on the background, because an interview is a formal conversation, so you don't want to have a very, very crowded background. So check on your background, check on the place where you'll be taking the interview. I've seen people on interviews and their background is crowded by people who are walking all over. The background is crowded with very funny images. So even if you're sharing a room, for instance, you really need to just request the people to allow you just the 30 or the 40 minutes or even the 1 hour that you'll be doing the interview, so that your background or your location is free from distraction. The next point, and that's the fifth one that you need to consider, is on your looks. You know, looks is everything in an interview. And as much as sometimes you may not discover that, creating a first impression through the way you look, through the way somebody just look at you, or rather see you at the first instance, is really, really important. But you find that sometimes we ignore because we think we just need to look good when we are doing physical interviews. So first impression matters, and you also want to create it even in a virtual interview. So ensure that you dress well. If you're to dress in a suit, the same way you'll dress for a physical interview is the same way you need to dress for a virtual interview. You basically need to treat it with the same seriousness that you use, or rather that you treat the physical interview. So ensure that you dress well, put on your suit, put on your dress, your smart dress, and just ensure that your look is on point, even for a virtual interview. The sixth point, you need to practice good interview techniques. And when I say good interview techniques, I mean especially how do you interact on the virtual call? How do you behave? How do you move your body? One of the things we're always being told that when in an interview, you need to smile, you need to be warm, you need to be calm, you need to balance, or rather you need to watch how your body moves. Body movement is quite important. So sometimes, or when we are communicating, we use our hands a lot, like even now the way I'm moving my hands, you use your hands a lot to express or rather to bring out the seriousness of what you're trying to convey. But when you're doing a virtual interview, one thing you need to really do is to minimize the movement of your body, or minimize the movement of your hands. So you need to practice the good interview techniques, which of course will include smiling, staying warm, and your pace of speaking, because you're speaking in a virtual setup, so you don't want to speak very fast that the panel will miss out on some of the things that you're saying. Also, you don't need to speak very slowly that someone might tell that you're either tired or you're showing less interest for the interview. So practicing these techniques like smiling, good body language in terms of how you move your body, trying to minimize moving your body, your hand and all that is really, really important, because at the end of it all, you know that you use your body to communicate a lot, even than the way we use spoken words or verbal communication. So non-verbal cues, quite important. You need to manage how you move your body when you're in a virtual interview. The next point you need to consider is to mute your device notification. So you don't want to get into an interview and have people calling you, messages coming up, like when you're on a virtual interview. For example, even if you're using your phone, you get instances where you're using your phone and text messages are coming in and the notifications are quite loud. So those are distractions that you don't want to get in the process of your interview. So you need to ensure that you mute your phone or your device notification, whatever device you're using, whether it's a phone, it's a computer, it's a laptop, whatever it is that you're using. Please ensure that you mute your device notification to avoid any distraction that may come in between the interview conversation. All right, the next tip is to practice looking into the mirror. Practice looking into the camera. You can do that in the mirror. Why I say that you need to practice looking at the camera is because most of the time we are tempted, or rather when you're doing interviews, we are tempted to look at the image of the interviewer, especially in the instance where you all put your videos on, which is not a bad thing. But if you keep on looking at the interviewer or the panel's images, sometimes, maybe for instance, if you're using a computer, and sometimes you'll find that their image is somewhere down there. So if you keep on looking, it will come out like you're looking down. So it's important that you put your head, or rather you focus in a position that your head is looking straight into the camera, so that you don't come out like you're looking down, because when you're doing an interview and your head is down, then it kind of questions your concentration, or someone might even think that you're referring to note somewhere, which is not a bad thing. But you need to try to focus on the camera, so it helps you to maintain also the eye contact. When the interviewer sees, or rather from the interviewer side, it comes out that you're focusing and you're actually maintaining an eye contact, which is a good technique when you're taking an interview. The next tip is to look friendly and confident, which is normal for any interview. You also need to practice this in a virtual interview. You need to look friendly. We've talked about smiling. Just looking friendly actually helps you to display a very positive attitude, which is good for the interview. Staying confident. Confidence helps you to actually come out competent, in terms of just somebody is able to tell that you know what you're talking about. So it's important that when you're doing an interview, you need to come out so confident, you need to come out so friendly, and this will just help the interviewer tell that you know what you're talking about. And the next point is to have notes. It's not bad to look through notes when you're doing an interview. Even though sometimes you might not get a chance to do this in a physical interview, one of the advantages of a virtual interview is that it helps you to read your notes. So when you're doing a virtual interview, you can just have a small notebook, or rather some notes, just to help you remember, especially when you're prepared for the interview, just to help you remember the notes, just to have a few pointers to help you remember some of the important points that you don't want to miss out when having your interview. All right, thank you guys for watching this video. That's all I had for you for how to prepare and points to consider when preparing for a virtual interview. If you've not subscribed, again, just to remind you to click that subscribe button to subscribe and join this community where we are all about learning and making ourselves better to build rewarding and fulfilling careers. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next video.